cakes a week. I needed stuff to do them. Smarty has always done so much on his own. Did they sue you?
Yeah, the agency.
I would have sued you.
No, I mean, they couldn't really sue me. I didn't sign like a non-compete.
Oh, that was their problem.
And I wasn't like copying them or anything. Like they just honestly, like to be honest, like I said, I'm going to go on my own. And I kind of quit, and then they just found like some other high school kid to learn 12 balloons and wear the baggy polka dots. Like, and it was a very like generic kind of like thing that they did. They weren't like super upset because they just really replaced me quickly with like another rando that they taught to make a dog and a sword. But like I was way more like serious about it than the company sending me out. You know what I mean? Like it meant a lot more to me than it did to them. The balloons and the counting.
I also don't think it was a compete clause because when you told me this is who I want to do for our first interview, I'm like, you want to interview a guy that makes animal balloons, and then you so 14-year career, that's amazing.
More because they're
And that you say that because I always thought it was more than just 12 balloons. Like I always tried to approach it as an art form. That was really like why I thought in the beginning. I thought people were really like selling this short. Like a lot of people would learn the 12 and that's it. They're like, I know my 12 balloons. I'm like, that's like asking a painter, like, how many things can you paint? He's like, I can paint 12 things and that's it. Like,
or how many cakes could we make? We could do anything.
Yeah. How many, songs can you go? I have 12 songs that I sing. Like, no artist limits themselves like that. Why would you limit yourself with balloons?
But were you an artist when in geology school?
I was never an artist. That's a weird thing. I was never an artist, and I was never a performer, and I was always way more interested in math and science than I was ever interested in like art or performing or anything like that. I don't even know how. I mean, I know how I got into this, but in retrospect, like, how did I end up doing this? This is a weird trajectory from where I started, for sure.
It's so interesting because when you said you were studying geology, I was thinking in my head, I'm like, oh, he wanted to recreate the rock forms. And that's why he was going to see what you could do in balloon form. It wasn't, I hated the rocks and I wanted to do something else. You were doing this.
Because I went to Columbia, and Columbia University is in New York City, and they actually own like a ship, like a boat, and they take it out onto the Atlantic Ocean to get rock cores from the ocean. And I was kind of like, that sounds awesome. They're like, well, if you're a geology major and you go into the grad program, you can like go on the expeditions on the boat. I'm like, well, I definitely want to do that. So that's in retrospect how I got into geology was like you pull them up and you take them back to the lab and they would like do research out in the ocean. And I kind of wanted to do that. That sounded, it was like joining the Navy without like any like guns or anything.
There you go.
Like you just, come out on the boat.
Hey, I landed my major because I had the most electives and they told me I had to pick one. So that's how I ended up with art history. So when you met your wife,
the lovely Dina,
what did she say when you told her what your career was?
I think she knew like I was like doing something because she met me when I was one half of an Elvis impersonating duo. The week we met was like I was Vegas Elvis and my friend Alton was like classic 50s Elvis, and she was very good friends with Alton from like a long time before that. So she met me through Alton, and we were like doing an Elvis impersonation act together. So right off the bat, she was like, "Are you an accountant?" You know what I mean? Like she didn't say that. You must be in real estate. Like no, she knew right away. So when I said, "Oh yeah, I'm like doing balloons, and I'm like kind of an entertainer with balloons," like that was not like surprising, and she was like, "Okay, that sounds cool. That sounds interesting."
And she's amazing, and we could. Also, one of my favorite parts about you, of course, is Penny Pants. And I can't believe she's how old now?
Penny is my daughter, and she just turned 9 summer, so she's 9 and a half. Yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe it either.
Because I remember when you were having, what made you want to bring her on stage with you?
It was, she decided. She's just like me. She's like, I'm working on some new material. She's like, I think it's really going to smash. It's really good. So why don't we try it out? And I'm like, okay. It wasn't my choice. Like, I'm not like some.
You're not a stage mom?
Like, it's her to be like, but once she's on stage, of course, I'm like, well, your delivery could be like a little different. So once she's out there, I'm like, of course, I have to help her. But I'm not like, if she's like, I'm not interested in doing this, then I'm never going to force her. Like, I'll be like, okay, have fun on the geology boat. But no, she likes to be funny. We're a lot alike for sure. She's definitely like a comedian for sure.
I think that's awesome.
And she's absolutely the cutest. I mean, just a gorgeous child. The cutest. I just adore you guys. So I've always thought you and Dina and Penny are so amazing because I ran my businesses, as you know, I've had a couple of husbands, and you two have stayed together the whole time. What are some tips for keeping your family together through being self-employed and now through this pandemic? I mean, the guys are amazing. And actually, we were meant to record last week, and Smarty had to cancel literally 5 minutes before because Dina had fallen down the stairs. Now, what a nice husband.
She's like, yeah, and I didn't want you to think that was like some excuse.
Not at all.
The podcast, my wife fell down the stairs. So I wouldn't, but I didn't want you to think that was like, no, like I heard like a boom, and I'm like, while getting the microphone set up, and I was like, what's going on? She's like, I fell down the stairs. I'm like, can I still do the podcast? And she's like, what do you think? I'm like, all right, I'll tell Naomi.
Oh my God. And of course, Dina's they're very different, but she's better now.
Yeah, she's fine. It wasn't like, it was just like you just fall down the stairs. She's okay, fortunately.
You make it work. And you live in the suburbs. You're another family that moved from the city to the suburbs.
I'm in Park Ridge now, so it's like right on the edge of we're right on the line. So yeah, we moved to Park Ridge when Penny was a little kid because we kept moving, like a lot of families, we kept moving apartments every few years, and it's a big hassle to have to move for whatever reason. And now that we had a kid, we're like, it would be better if we didn't have to move every like 3 years. So we should find like a permanent place to live. And we ended up in Park Ridge.
And how do you keep the glue together?
How to keep the glue together? I think the first thing is a lot of people have like in marriages and in general have egos, and like if they screwed up or they did something wrong, like they will deny it and dance around it and they'll ignore it. And I feel like it's usually easier to just say, I screwed up, I'm sorry, like that was dumb to do, and just move on with it. Because sometimes the easiest way to like get out of your trouble is just to admit it and say, I screwed up. And I screw up a lot. Like I do dumb stuff sometimes. And I admit it and I say, I screwed up. We shouldn't, professionally I say, we should not have done that event. It was a bad choice. And I will try not to book that kind of event in the future because it is not right for us. Things like that. Personally, it's like, that's a professional issue that we would get into, that I would say, I'm sorry, you were right and I was wrong. So right there, and she's the same. If she screws up, she'll say, I'm sorry. I think that kind of like willing to like subsume your ego to apologize and own up to what you've done wrong is like 50% of it right off the bat.
And Dina performs with you, correct?
She does. So we originally just got started doing like, I was doing balloons and people would ask like, hey, do you have a face painter? And she's like an artist. She's like has a lot of artistic talent. So face painting was like not that big a deal. She's like, I can paint on kids' faces, no problem. So we started out as kind of like a duo just because people were asking for it. And then when I got into more doing a balloon show, it's hard to do a show by yourself. It's hard to like wear the pants while you're washing them, so to speak. So I kind of asked her to help me with the show, a lot of behind the scenes things, and then of course she became friends. So now she's in the show, and that's kind of how it happened. I fell into show business, and then once I was already in the well, I said, "Hey, come on in," and she jumped in there after me.
No, I think that's awesome, and I definitely agree with your comment that you made about there's been many times where myself and another salesperson, and I'm like, no, that's not the right client for us, and they've argued, and I'm like, fine, I'll tell you, I told you so at the end. Been in that position. Really seriously, we need to connect because I need you to do my events. My clients, my corporate clients would love this. They're always asking me, what's the next big... I can't believe I've never had you in the space where I work, and I keep wanting to say the name of it.
You've never heard of him either.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, like, I'm always getting asked, what's the next big thing? And, like, last year, my big thing was this, well, not last year, because we didn't do events, 2019, was this electric violin quartet that did dancing on the stage while I played the violin. They were amazing women.
I've seen them before.
To be working at my events.
They electric violin, and they walk around and stuff, and they do, like, and there's one woman who's kind of leader, and she's blonde, and she has 3 other women. Is that what you're talking about?
Something like that. It was like 2 years ago.
I saw them at First Night Evanston, and we were like one of like 8 people who were there, and I remember seeing them.
Yeah.
I was very sad that there was only 8 people to witness.
They're amazing.
And that's another thing about Smarty. He is so respectful at events pre-pandemic, is he brings this like orphan Christmas Eve. We go to the Cantonese or Mandarin restaurant. Smart. Where?
It's the House of Wasan, yes, and it's a very old school Chinese restaurant in Lincoln Square. It's been there forever, yeah.
So he organizes like a orphan Christmas Eve night, and he brings like, myself, Mikey went, and some face painters from Montana, I think, and then Miss Jamie, the country. I mean, he brings other artists, and it was really nice. And then the pandemic, of course, nobody goes anywhere, just ever.
And speaking of the face painting, does Dina ever work by herself, without you and Penny?
So as our kind of career progressed, to be honest, the show became more of our interests.
Cool.
And even when I'm making balloons at an event, like at a museum or a party, I still bring like a theatrical quality to it. I make the balloons, but I try and make them in a really fun way. It's an interesting visual spectacle watching me make the balloons. It's not a formal show like I would do on a stage, but it's still a visual interest. Face painting was never really her passion.
Got it.
She because people asked for it. And as the years progressed, and she said, you can only do so many things in your life. There's other face painters in Chicago that are very talented and much more into face painting. I'm going to take a step back from face painting, and I won't mind if you work with other face painters. The show is really what's special for us, but the face painting was always just something that I just did as your kind of partner. So she's kind of really taken a step back from face painting, to be honest with you.
No, I was just curious. So do you think we're going to have events in 2021?
Oh, boy. It's hard to speculate because originally I was told that this was going to be an extra week of spring break. So, it's hard. That's what I was told, was every kid is getting an extra week of spring break and we'll be done by Easter. That's what I was told. So it's hard for me to speculate. I try not to be falsely optimistic with this, just because it's never ended well. So when are we going to get back to live events? I don't know. Who knows? Nobody knows. Anyone who says they know is not being truthful.
Well, I will say this. I have a planner that is still holding on hope that her bride is going to get married on April 24th. Come hell or high water. In 2.5 months.
No, not happening.
But she's like, so we just reopened to 25 people, right? And she's like, her count was 200. She's like, well, she'll settle for 50. I'm like, how do you go from 200 to 50 people? So, hey, I'd love to have the business. We gave back so much money last year because we were nice about it.
Let's talk about that. I know with my business closing it, I had to refund. Luckily, it was my third location. If you don't mind me asking, what happened to your future events and how did you handle that?
Oh, boy. Like most entertainers, I would say like March 26th was like the worst day of my life.
Worst day ever.
Really March 26th is probably or April 4th. That's like a horrible days for like entertainers. What happened? What happened to me is what happened to like probably most people in this business. All my private parties were not happening and they wanted their deposit back. And I wasn't in the position to say, I wasn't going to be that guy that was going to give them a hard time. I certainly understood. It wasn't like they just decided not to have their party and they want their money back. This is like a worldwide pandemic. So I had to eat it and I had to hand back their deposits. And I made it very quick. I gave them their deposits back very quickly because I felt like the longer it dragged on, the worse feelings were going to be around. So I just gave my deposits back right away. I didn't make it difficult for the people. And I don't think anyone wanted their deposits back because they were being malicious. I think they just were upset that their event wasn't happening and they didn't want to pay their deposit. So that was that. That was for private events. And then fortunately for public events, and when I say public events, library shows, we do lots of shows in public libraries. And I kind of said, why don't we hold off? And if it turns out that you'll be using a virtual show, like a virtual show on Zoom would work for you, let's convert our live show booking to a Zoom booking. And a lot of libraries, I think a lot of librarians really felt bad because a lot of performers that they knew were having a hard time. So they really went the extra mile to really say, if we can get you on a virtual show, we will do it. And a lot of librarians really came through. I was really appreciative how they kind of really had my back converting the live show to a virtual show.
I think that with the individuals giving the money back, I've heard so many horror stories from my clients that like